And Scott, let me know when you can go ahead and it's open.
Yeah, it's open now. Might
Okay,
just take a minute for people to filter in.
okay. Well, we can go ahead and get started. Um, okay, great. Well, evening, everyone. Welcome for joining. Thank you for joining us for our call today. My name is Sheilon Zudi. I'm the Natural Resources Planner for Santa Clara County Parks. I'm here today to present to you the Sanborn and Upper Stevens Creek County Parks Forest Health Plan. Also representing County Parks is Michael Rhodes, our Natural Resources Program Manager. We're
Hello,
also
everyone.
we are also joined by our consulting group, Deck Environmental, represented by Scott Eckert. He's a project manager who has been working with county parks in developing the Forest Health Plan. We appreciate that Chief Ed Ori with CAL FIRE and Chief Mike Matheson with County Fire are also here in attendance tonight. Both agencies have reviewed the project recommendations of the plan and have provided their input on the first draft as we continue to develop the plan further. Both agencies have also been helping county parks implement forest health improvement projects for a number of years. So thank you, Chief Ed Ori and Chief Mike Matheson for joining. We greatly appreciate you all joining us for tonight's public meeting. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to inform you on the progress we've made on the plan and to receive your input and feedback as representatives of the public, interested parties, and stakeholders. Some guidance to share before we get started. As we go through tonight's presentation, please feel free to enter any questions you may have into the chat feature and state your name, the agency you're representing, or if you're a member of the public. We will save time for after the presentation to go through each written comment or question with the remainder of the meeting. If you would like to verbally express any questions or comments, please raise your hand at the end of the presentation to be called on and unmute yourself. Each individual will be given 3 minutes to share their comments or questions. It's important to note that tonight's meeting will also be recorded, so if you would like to watch the meeting back, it'll be available on the County Parks website. We are also offering option for closed captioning. If you would like to utilize this feature, you will see a notification above saying closed caption and live transcript in the meeting controls. So feel free to click on closed caption if you would prefer to have that for this meeting. So that covers all the quick rules for tonight, and now we can go ahead and present our presentation for the evening. Alrighty, next slide. So in this presentation, I will go through the following items related to the Sanborn and Upper Stevens Creek Forest Health Plan and the Parks and Recreation Department strategy for forest health throughout the park system. These items will include the background, purpose, recommendations, compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, referred to as CEQA, implementation, and the schedule for the Forest Health Plan. Next slide. This will be the second Forest Health Plan conducted by Santa Clara County Parks and Recreation Department. This Forest Health Plan was originally started in 2019, but was put on hold due to capacity issues during the COVID-19 pandemic. This Forest Health Plan has been developed to guide forest management activities at Sanborn County Park and Upper Stevens Creek County Park. Both county parks span approximately 4,713 acres of parkland and are located west of the city of San Jose in the Santa Cruz Mountain Range. They're situated between Skyline Boulevard to the west and City of Saratoga to the east. Park forests face many threats that increase tree stress, including climate change, drought, fire suppression, tree density, pest and disease infestation, and wildfires. All of these stressors persist regionally throughout most of the Santa Cruz Mountains. Climate change increases the threat of park forests through increased temperatures and decreased precipitation. Such threats increase the potential for tree mortality and failure, posing a risk to both park staff and visitors. Another specific concern is fire and protection of these parks and neighboring communities from catastrophic wildfire. In most locations, the fuel load is extremely heavy and the latter fuels are abundant throughout. Additionally, unhealthy forests have the potential to cause species loss, reduction in species diversity, increased wildfire hazard, and a reduction in recreational benefits. Next slide. Currently, proactive forest management practices conducted in the parks are limited to the implementation of the park's tree safety program, treatment or removal of hazardous trees identified during this effort, and the implementation of shaded field breaks with regional partners. This plan recommends a continuation of the county parks tree safety program. This program conducts biannual inspections to address targeted removal of hazardous trees in public use areas to mitigate their risk to public and park resources while still aiming to maintain a representation of the natural ecosystem. The tree safety program has a documented process and procedures for detection, monitoring, evaluation, and the treatment of potentially hazardous trees. County Parks has also implemented fuel breaks on park properties throughout cooperative efforts with CAL FIRE, County Fire, and the Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council. 2 fuel breaks have actually already been implemented in the past 5 years, one occurring at Sanborn County Park, known as the Black Road Shaded Fuel Break, and the other at Upper Stevens Creek County Park, known as the Charcoal Road Table Mountain Shaded Fuel Break. Next slide. So these are photos that demonstrate the typical work that's conducted under forest health plans. These photos are showing the process of constructing a shaded field break at Mount Madonna County Park. County Park staff follow the recommendations of the Forest Health Plan to select trees for removal and to keep. So you can see members of CAL FIRE cutting the removal of these pre-selected trees, and then later chip. This work is typically conducted by contractors, CAL FIRE crews, county fire crews, and park staff. Next slide. In these comparison photos, you can note the visible clearance from the road after the shaded field break was constructed. Forest thinning can be very beneficial to both the forest health and the aesthetic viewshed. By removing many of these young trees that would normally be removed naturally by fire, it reduces the competition between trees for sunlight, nutrients, and water. Slide. This is also another visual representation of the forest conditions before and after a shaded field break was implemented. You can see the visible contrast through managing the density of fuels adjacent to the road that pose a major hazard. Slide. Shaded fuel breaks also allow for careful selection of the fuels that can be removed while still retaining the desired plant species, such as these ferns that are present on the project site. Slide. So the purpose of the Forest Health Plan is to identify the stressors and threats in order to mitigate hazards to park users and employees, identify projects and practices that promote forest resiliency, and to avoid or minimize impacts to other natural resources and recreational facilities. The objectives of the Forest Health Plan are as follows: to improve forest conditions to promote long-term forest health, remove hazards to the public and infrastructure in use areas, monitor forest stressors and threats, identify areas to reduce wildfire threats to the park and nearby communities, implement best management practices to minimize effects of the forest management activities, and lastly, to evaluate the effectiveness of forest management activities. Next slide. So these are the project-specific recommendations included in the plan, and they're intended to address some of the forest threats directly through shaded field breaks and defensible spaces, and indirectly through forest health thinning practices. In order to develop a long-term management strategy, the county has retained UDEC Environmental to assist in the preparation of the Forest Health Plan. The consultants were chosen based on their wealth of knowledge and in-house resources for a professional forest health plan. DUDEC has experience working in the urban and rural forested environments, and they are also developed the Forest Health Plan for the Mount Madonna County Park in 2018. In addition, they have experience working in forests throughout California, specifically with CAL FIRE in the SoCal Demonstration Forest in Santa Cruz County. So at this point in the presentation, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Scott Eckert with DUDEC Environmental to discuss the specific project recommendations of this Forest Health Plan.
Thank you, Shalon. So this slide shows preliminary project recommendations at Sanborn County Park that were identified in the Forest Health Plan intended to address the plan's goals and objectives. Shaded fuel breaks are proposed along main access routes in and adjacent to the park, including Black Road, shown in red, Sanborn Road, shown in pink, and Skyline Boulevard shown in purple. They're also proposed along identified evacuation routes, which are shown in green. Fuel break treatments are also proposed for defensible space areas around park buildings and existing and planned campground areas. Proposed vegetation treatments in fuel breaks do not involve complete removal of vegetation, but rather selective treatments to increase the horizontal spacing between retained tree canopies and the vertical spacing between surface vegetation and overstory tree canopies, also called ladder fuels. Management in these areas would also include treating grasses, weeds, broom, and other readily ignitable vegetation. Shaded fuel breaks also compartmentalize fuels and help to contribute to larger regional wildfire prevention efforts. The plan also proposes some forest health and resiliency projects, including the Lake Ranch Reservoir project shown in the orange hatch polygon on the map, and the Linden Canyon project shown in the blue hatch on the map. These are broader scale forest treatment projects focused on improving forest health by reducing tree densities and addressing conifer encroachment into hardwood woodlands. Specific treatment areas would be delineated in the future for these areas. Also incorporated into the plan are the treatment areas identified in the regional Los Gatos Creek Watershed Collaborative Project. These are shown in the purple and yellow hatch polygons on the map. Similar to the plan's forest health and resiliency projects, these projects are also intended to improve forest health by reducing stand densities and conifer encroachment. The Christmas Tree Farm project, shown in blue, recommends promoting growth of native tree species by selectively removing non-native trees. In addition, the plan includes recommendations for reintroducing prescribed burning where appropriate through pile burning or broadcast burning. These types of treatments would generally be completed as part of other project implementation, such as shaded fuel breaks or hazard tree removal to treat cut material or surface vegetation. However, broadcast burning could also be used as a standalone treatment in key areas in coordination with fire agencies. Similar to Sanborn County Park, recommended projects at Upper Stevens Creek include a shaded fuel break along Skyline Boulevard, shown in the darker purple color, and along Charcoal Road and Table Mountain, shown in green. This area also includes an extension into the former Christmas Tree Farm on Table Mountain. Also included are a few treatment areas that are part of the Los Gatos Creek Watershed Collaborative Project, shown in the purple hatch polygons on the map. These areas have the same focus as the Sanborn Park treatment areas, improving forest health through reducing stand densities and conifer encroachment. Part of the plan, development of the plan includes conducting environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. Forest Health Plan is being evaluated under CEQA and is being tiered from the California Vegetation Treatment Program, or CalVTP program EIR. This EIR requires preparation of a project-specific analysis, or PSA, and this analysis addresses all of the CEQA Appendix G checklist items, and specifically has requirements for biological and cultural resource assessments. So biological resource assessments are being conducted for the PSA being conducted for the Forest Health Plan. This effort includes data and data review and research, as well as reconnaissance level field surveys throughout all of the areas that were shown on the previous maps. These field surveys were conducted in June of this year, and standard project requirements and mitigation measures outlined in the CalVTP program EIR would be applied to avoid or minimize impacts to biological resources. We're also in the process of coordinating with and consulting with the regulatory agencies. The cultural resources assessment included outreach to the Native American Heritage Commission, as well as tribal outreach. The assessment also included cultural resource surveys, which included record searches, as well as reconnaissance level field surveys conducted in May and June of this year. Both of the biological resource and cultural resource assessments are being used in development of the PSA. So with that, I'll hand it back to Sheila.
All right, thank you, Scott. Based on the outcome of the Forest Health Plan, county parks will establish an implementation plan for the next 20 years to prioritize the recommended forest management projects. This time frame is deemed suitable to accomplish the plan's management recommendations and evaluate their effectiveness in meeting the plan's forest management project goals and objectives. The county has coordinated with partners such as CAL FIRE, Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council, and Mid-Peninsula Open Space District to execute various projects. Supplement the capital improvement projects budget, also known as CIP budget. Additional funding will be generated from various sources, including the annual funding through Forest Health Capital Programs, Los Gatos Watershed Forest Health Collaborative Grant, and the CAL FIRE Forest Health Grant programs. Next slide. The county is completing the final forest health plan this fall. During the public outreach process this month, County Parks has conducted a series of 2 stakeholder meetings, which has supported the development of the plan and its associated environmental review document under CEQA, which is forthcoming. The intent of tonight's public meeting is to inform owners, neighboring partners, neighboring properties, interested public and partner agencies, and any interested members of the public on the Forest Health Plan and the department's strategy for implementing its recommendation. The input we received tonight will be considered for incorporation into the final report this fall, and the plan will have a CEQA determination based on the environmental analysis. Final report will be presented to the Santa Clara Housing, Land Use, Environmental, and Transportation Committee, also known as HULIT, and with a favorable recommendation will be considered by the Board of Supervisors in January of 2023. If the Forest Health Plan is approved, we would begin the evaluation of the projects, considering the priorities, costs, and permitting requirements, then to begin implementation as early as spring of 2023. Next slide. That concludes tonight's presentation portion of the meeting. We will be opening the floor to take questions at this time. So again, if you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand to be called on or type your question into the chat feature and we'll begin to discuss the questions that we received today. As a reminder, please state your name and the agency that you are representing, or if you're a member of the public. And we ask that you limit your question to just 1 or 2 questions to ensure that we allow everyone time to provide their comments. Everyone will be given 3 minutes to share their comments and questions. If you do not finish your question or comment within the 3-minute time period, please raise your hand again and we'll add you to the end of the line to speak again. So at this time, we'll go ahead and have Scott go ahead and begin to read the questions that have been typed into the chat feature. If you haven't already typed them in, feel free to go ahead and start inputting your questions and comments at this point, and we'll go ahead and start reading those out. And thank you everyone for listening in on tonight's presentation. We'll go ahead and begin with questions.
No questions as of yet. So
no questions as of yet.
I will let you know as soon as we get
okay. And again, you can go ahead and raise your hand if you feel more comfortable doing that rather than inputting it into the chat feature. And we'll just go ahead and give you guys a moment of time to do that. Scott, we actually have a couple questions coming in right now. Want to go ahead and start?
I do see those. Yep, just getting those in. Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for submitting some questions. We'll go ahead and start answering them.
Okay, so the first question is from Alice Kaufman. And her question is, can you show the slide with the timeline again? When will the draft plan be available for public comment?
Okay, great. So while Scott goes ahead and goes back to the timeline slide, I'll go ahead and answer this question. So thank you for your question, Alice, as to when we will be having our plan available to the public for comment. So at this point, we have not shared the plan for review from the public. Tonight's purpose was to gain all of your comments tonight so that we can go ahead and start looking into them for further consideration as we're in the drafting period. What we will do come December, January, we will post the plan on our website for public to view and be able to read through and offer any of their questions and comments at that time. It'll also be posted on CAL FIRE's website, including the project-specific analysis and the draft plan. So around December, January time is when you'll be able to access the plan and read through on our website or CAL FIRE's website. Okay, Scott, what's our next question?
Sure. The next question we have is from Jane Manning, who is representing the South Skyline Fire Safe Council. Her question is, does the plan intend to perform any restoration activities such as planting black oak acorns or seedlings?
Okay, thank you, Jane, for your question. I would actually like to defer to Michael Rhodes, our Natural Resources Program Manager, based on any questions related to the restoration activities. So Michael, if you can go ahead and offer some information.
Yeah, thank you, Shilon. Michael Rhodes, Natural Resources Program Manager for Santa Clara County Parks. Jane, thank you for your question. In general, we prefer natural restoration and natural regeneration, as these projects will alleviate the overcrowded forest conditions, the unnaturally dense forest. We know that species such as black oak and a lot of the native understory shrubs that are currently being shaded out by that over competition will thrive. We find that that's the most cost-effective and reliable method of restoring forest health, as contrasted with us going in and doing plantings, trying to arrange for irrigation and more kind of hands-on restoration. That passive restoration is expected to be successful.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, Scott, we are ready for the next question.
Sure. This question is from Ronald Horry. His question is, who will do the work? Contractors, park staff, or both? Will there be volunteer opportunities?
Great. Thank you, Ronald, for your question. I will go ahead and have Michael answer the question related to the work, but as far as volunteer opportunities, County Parks does have a very robust volunteer program, and so we will look into considering where we can implement volunteers into the plan. But yeah, so as far as contractors and staffing for the implementation, Michael can go ahead and provide some insight on that question.
Yeah, thank you, Shilon. And thank you, Ron. Thank you for being here, listening in tonight. We anticipate much of this work will be done with contractors. Just the scale of the treatment involved is going to require the use of mechanical thinning equipment, and that's not equipment that we own or operate, and we can do that most efficiently through contracts. And we're getting some firsthand experience with that through the Los Gatos Watershed Collaborative Project, where County Parks, Mid-Penn, and San Jose Water will be sharing forestry contractors to do large-scale understory thinning type projects too. With park staff and their obligations to provide for visitor services and maintain visitor amenities, they're really a limited resource for doing this type of work. We've had great success partnering with fire agencies when they're fully staffed and not involved in other incidents. We get a fair amount of work done that way. But again, our aim to accomplish the large-scale treatments that this plan recommends, we would do so with contractors. As always, we would like to include our volunteers, and I think there's opportunities for people to be involved when there's more precise work, such as pruning and hand thinning work, or going in after the mechanical treatment along a trail corridor to clean things up. And as Shilon mentioned, and as you know, Ron, we've got a robust volunteer program that can help us with that specific work.
Thank you, Michael. And then Scott, if you are able to read the next question, that'd be wonderful.
Sure. Yes. The next is really a comment from Cody Cifuentes Winter. Thank you for the additional outreach. Mid-Penn looks forward to working with Santa Clara County Parks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your comment.
The next question is from Kristen Lee. Does the work done by the plan intend to use pesticides, and specifically, will it use glyphosate?
Okay, thank you, Kristen, for your comment and question. Michael will be able to provide further clarity related to the integrative pest management policy that we have within the county in terms of the use of pesticides or glyphosate. Michael, if you're able to shed some light on that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question, Kristen. The county does have an integrated pest management program. Over the past 15 years or so, that program has helped all county departments reduce their use of herbicide, including glyphosate-based herbicides, significantly. And there's really, simply put, there's a process through which we would have to demonstrate that we did not have other alternatives to the use of glyphosate in order to use that to control invasives. Our partners at Mid-Penn are a little ahead of us with this regard. They're going through and treating broom and pre-treating some of their forest health treatment areas, and we hope to learn more from Mid-Penn's experience also. Examples of where we have used herbicide, not glyphosate specifically, but where we're trying to control eucalyptus, and we have to use herbicide to control the resprout. That's applied in the most judicious and minimal way, such as injecting it directly into the stump or daubing it onto the freshly cut stump. So the current practices, the current best practices in controlling resprouts from those types of invasives really uses the minimal amount of any herbicide as necessary. As always, we'll explore the use of fire and other treatments as an alternative to herbicide use.
Thank you, Michael. All righty. Then Scott, if we have any more questions.
Sure, we do have one more, again from Jane Manning. Time allowing, could you also re-show the maps and kindly fill in more detail on types of activities that will occur along the existing fire breaks of Charcoal Road and Black Road? These are included in the South Skyline Fire Safe Council area, and we have previously collaborated with the Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council on these locations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Jane, for your comment and question. We'll go ahead and have Scott flip back to that slide that shows the project recommendations and treatments. And Scott and Michael, if you would like to just add any additional information regarding our treatments along Sanborn County Park and Upper Stevens Creek County Park, that would be great.
I would only add to that as Jane's really noting in her comment, our coordination with each of the fire safe councils is really essential to the success of implementing this plan. They bridge to the neighborhoods, the neighborhood groups and those residential communities adjacent to our park in a very effective way. And really our work is leveraged by their work such that we get fuel reduction projects completed adjacent to our particular park boundary through the fire safe councils. So of course we see our work as a complementary. Each of the fire safe councils is a hugely important partner to us. And in the case of the Los Gatos Watershed Collaborative Project, of which is really a subset of actions contained in this plan, Fire Safe has helped secure those funds from CAL FIRE and is managing that grant on behalf of the other partners. And we're hugely appreciative of that. So we will be in touch with each of the fire safe councils as we proceed with the plan, again, to leverage that community involvement and seeing similar improvements occur on private property near and next to our parkland.
Great. Thank you, Michael.
We do have one more question. This is from Kristen Lee, again, a follow-up. Says, thanks, Michael, for that answer. This is in respect to the herbicide question. Thanks, Michael, for that answer. Are you aware if Mid-Penn plan to pre-treat with glyphosate?
Yeah, thanks for refining the question, Kristen. I'm aware Mid-Penn is on the call, but I don't want to put their representative in an awkward situation. But I can say that they maintain an excellent and up-to-date website, and they would, Kristen, you can find more specifics about Mid-Penn's pre-treatment prior to their forest health plans and what, their forest health actions, and whether or not they're using glyphosate specifically. And they also have a good IPM page that's separate from, but coordinated with and supportive of their forest health work too. So I would just simply refer you to the Mid-Penn websites for more information. And I know their staff would be happy to follow up with you if you have any specific questions. But I think we'll exclude that from this particular discussion this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Kristen Lee just responded, thanks. So, and then Cody actually indicated he is willing to speak if you'd like that.
Sure. Yeah, we can go ahead and have him, if we would like to unmute him and have him provide any clarity on that question related to Mid-Penn.
Good afternoon. This is Cody Cifuentes Winter with Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space. I'm the Senior Resource Management Specialist and project manager for the work happening on Mid-Penn lands. We are not using glyphosate currently at that project site. Currently, we are doing everything with manual or mechanical removal, and that's what we do foresee using going forward at this project.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cody. We appreciate you providing some input on tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Just another comment from Jane Manning. Thank you for your comments. The South Skyline Fire Safe Council appreciates and values the opportunity to collaborate.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane. We appreciate your comment and all your input. Greatly appreciated.
We have another question from Ronald Ori. Are you working with Castle Rock State Park?
Okay, thank you, Ronald, for your question. We are not working with Castle Rock State Park at this moment, but I'm not sure if Michael wants to add anything related to our state park adjacent park that's next to our 2 county parks for the Forest Health Plan.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe we did reach out to state parks, that particular unit, to let them be aware that we're preparing this plan. They've been implementing similar forest health projects and doing some large scale planning too. However, that particular unit has been very busy with fire recovery after the SEU Lightning Complex fire. And I know a lot of their efforts have been focused on repairing and reopening Big Basin, for example. So I think they may be a little behind us in pursuing large scale forest health projects up on at the skyline there. However, I'm aware the County Fire is working to secure some federal grants that would bring similar forest thinning work along the skyline corridor, and that would build off of some work that's already been completed by Caltrans, Cal Fire, and other agencies too. And I believe State Parks is a partner in that effort also. And so really on the largest scale, all the agencies will come together and we will be able to build out those Highway 9 Black Road skyline corridors, such that we've got safer ingress and egress, and particularly to use those corridors as areas to slow or stop an uncontrolled fire. So in summary, thanks for the comment, Ron. We will keep working with state parks and looking for opportunities to leverage our work with theirs.
Great. Thank you, Michael, for your input. And thank you, Ronald, for your question. We appreciate it.
We have another comment from Kristen Lee. Thank you, Cody, for clarifying that Mid-Penn is using mechanical removal only. That's good to hear.
Great. Thank you, Kristen, for your comment, and thank you, Cody, for providing your input to answer her question. We appreciate it. And we're able to take any questions if you raise your hand. If you'd like to speak verbally, provide question or comment, or continue to input your questions in the chat feature, we're able to answer any questions, comments, concerns you have regarding the Forest Health Plan. Scott, have we received any more at this point? I don't think we have.
Nothing further at this point.
Nothing further. Okay. We'll give you guys more time. Feel free to input. And we can also revisit previous slides if you'd like to gain further clarity and clarification on any of the information we shared tonight.
Okay, we do have another question that just came in from Ronald Horry. What impacts will there be to park users?
Okay, thank you, Ronald, for your question. The impacts we foresee to park users related to the treatments of these projects proposed in the Forest Health Plan mainly consist of just temporary closures for certain trails within our parks. They'll be properly and adequately notifying everyone before, coming out to the parks. It'll be marketed properly and information will be shared prior. So you would be able to know when these projects would occur with adequate notification to the public. So other than that, it would just be temporary closures of certain parts of the county parks. And Michael, feel free to add if I missed anything related to user impacts.
I think you've covered it, Shilon. Again, we expect some trail closures. Maybe the greatest impact might be some very short-term campsite closures if there's work occurring within a proximity to some campsites. We would try to time that at the slow season, that type of thing too. But just short-term impacts, and a lot of this work is happening in the outside of the core use areas also. So I don't think there will be a great inconvenience to our park users, but we recognize it's hugely important that we keep people informed of the impacts early and frequently during the project.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that.
We have another question from Kristen Lee. Time permitting, are you able to revisit the discussion on the extent to which the plan is focused on wildfire prevention versus other forest health items such as reducing competition?
Okay. Thank you, Kristen. We appreciate your question. The plan really is focused on both components, wildfire prevention, and we can have fire agencies speak more to that as well. But yes, a lot of the treatments are going to be taking a look at how we can reduce those fuel loads to prevent any sort of catastrophic wildfire from occurring, and if so, to reduce the intensity at which they would occur. If we can have Chief Ed Ori or Mike Matheson, or Michael, if you would like to add more information to the wildfire prevention versus other forest items within the plan, that would be greatly appreciated to answer Kristen's question.
Yes, I'd be happy to. I would say that a healthy forest is also a low risk for catastrophic fire condition in a nutshell. So much of what they've proposed to do is include stalking control, ladder fuels in critical areas, removal of understory vegetation, dead and down, excessive accumulation, and all of those things benefit forest health as well as reducing the risk of a catastrophic wildfire. There is no preventing wildfires. And you didn't mention drought, but similarly with the current drought conditions, the vegetation is more stressed, and the thinning, the cleanup will help with those conditions. And they have mitigations for wildlife habitat, birds, herpafauna, mammals, et cetera, built in.
Thank you, Chief Ed Ori. We appreciate your input on that. Okay, great. Thank you, Kristen, for your question.
We have another question from Jane Manning. Several neighbors have noticed numerous flag trees along trails adjacent to Skyline Boulevard in Sanborn Park near the Summit Rock parking. What do the flags indicate?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Jane. That flagging was put in place for the pre-bid contractors walkthrough for the Los Gatos Watershed Collaborative Project. So on our land and on Mid-Penn's land, we went through and flagged trees that would be retained. So what you're seeing, that orange flagging, is indicating trees that would still be in place once the forest health treatments were implemented. And so currently, and I'm really glad you asked this question, because we spent a few hours Monday putting up some signs at Summit Rock explaining to trail users what exactly is going on with that flagging, because there's a lot of it and it's going to be up for a while longer. Similarly, at Charcoal Road, we just put up signs Monday describing what that flagging is about. So that's it. It was a way for the prospective contractors to get a visual sense of what the work would look like once it was completed. And it also kind of helps us understand in our own minds what it might look like. And I read that as a good interpretive opportunity also, that we've got a bunch of flagging out in the forest, and we can start talking about the project with our trail users. So you'll see, you and your neighbors will see some temporary signs out there now that explain the flagging.
Great. Thank you, Michael, for your insight. We appreciate that. And thank you for your question. Okay. Do we have any other questions?
We do. Yeah, this is a sort of a follow-on question from Jane Manning related to the previous question. Same neighbors asked me to find out what protections will be in place to avoid impact on nesting fledgling peregrine falcons at Summit Rock. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane, for your question. Biological resources are very important to county parks, as you all know. So prior to any type of projects taking place, we will make sure that all bird surveys would be conducted. And Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, we would probably also not conduct work within nesting bird season, as well as that also precaution we would be taking.
Yeah, that's correct. Shalon's explained the kind of the blanket mitigation, which would be conducting pre-nesting surveys prior to any work and establishing buffers around any active nests. However, at Summit Rock, we've got a very unique resource in that we have peregrine falcons that repeatedly use Summit Rock as a hatchery. And we've been managing that for years, often to the disappointment of rock climbers. But it's a very important resource there that we're aware of, and that work in that area will be timed so as not to impact the peregrines that return to it year after year.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, Jane, for your question.
We have another question from an anonymous attendee. What will the visual impact be at the Christmas tree farm viewed from Black and Skyline?
Okay, yep. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, thank you for that question. We've discussed what we do with that tree farm at Black and Skyline for a while. It's it's currently used as both a training ground for fire crews needing saw training. We're able to use that as a way to go in and cut out those non-native Christmas tree species and maintain a buffer between the tree plantation and the native forest, so we don't get that conifer encroachment in the forest and kind of lose control of that. What our recommendation in the plan is that the tree farm is continued to be used in that fashion and slowly phased out. It's in our estimation that a wholesale removal of all the conifers in the old tree farm and restoration to a native forest would be very costly and probably not the best use of taxpayer dollars when we could be focusing work towards restoration of areas where we have a natural forest already that's in need of some treatment. So the tree farm will not look visually different through implementation of the plan, but one could expect it would be phased out or its footprint reduced over the approximate 20-year time frame for the forest plan.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate it. And thank you to the individual who sent that question, and we appreciate it.
Okay, we have another question from Alice Kaufman. Would it be correct to say that this plan is prioritizing road corridors? It appears that that you're not at this time attempting to reduce fuel loads throughout the entire park area. Also, it looks like the primary goal is reducing wildfire risk rather than restoring the forest to old growth, late cereal characteristics.
Okay, thank you, Alice, for your question. I'll go ahead and have Michael answer your question here.
Yeah, that's a great observation, Alice. And I realize that we do tend to talk about shaded fuel breaks, and we use that term probably more than anything else. But you might recall Scott talking about the Leiden Canyon treatment area, as well as the Lake Ranch treatment area. Those are large interior areas. Linden Canyon itself is not particularly road accessible. And the objective there would be to restore that forest to a late cereal condition. That meaning, to folks not familiar with the term, that there's a variety of ages, including some declining trees, which are really important for habitat. And our objective there would be to create or recreate a diversity of tree age and, again, tree condition as a really mimicking an undisturbed natural condition, which is really desirable. Now, a lot of the treatment areas are road adjacent because so much of our interior areas, not road adjacent, are stricken with sudden oak death. And work there is going to be very difficult and very expensive given the access issues, the terrain, and the limitations on what we can actually do with forest biomass that's being removed for the overall health of the project. So as you can see from the maps, there is a lot of emphasis on, again, accessible corridor type treatments that benefits our wildfire resiliency work, but that's not the only goal of the plan. And if that's not a complete answer, Alice, please come back to it and ask anything else that we can help clarify. I may ask Ed Ory or Scott to expand on that, both as professional foresters that can explain that in better terms than I can. But thank you for the comment. It's a good one.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael, for your input. And thank you, Alice, for your question. Appreciate it.
We do have one last comment, actually. This is from Kristen Lee. Thanks, Ed. Yes, understood. It is a wildfire reduction, mitigation, etc., rather than a complete prevention. This is referring to his previous comments.
Great. Thank you, Kristen, for your comment. And thank you, Ed, for your explanation to her question earlier. We're just waiting for any additional questions to come in or comments that you have based on the forest health plan and where we're at with drafting. Feel free to input any additional questions, or if you need further clarification on any of the questions we have already answered. If you have any follow-up, feel free. Okay, Scott, have we received any additional comments, written comments, or
Nothing additional.
nothing yet? Nothing additional? Okay, and then how about are there any hands raised from our participants tonight?
I don't see any hands raised either.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll just give it a couple more minutes to receive any additional comments before we go ahead and adjourn our public meeting for this evening for the Forest Health Plan. We want to make sure we're providing ample time for you all to provide any questions or comments or concern related to the plan. This is your time to voice any of that so that we can go ahead and consider that as we continue to develop the plan further before we go ahead and post it on our website. Any additional comments, Scott, at this time?
Nothing yet, no.
Okay.
No hands raised and no
No
additional
hands raised.
questions.
Okay. Well, I suppose we can go ahead and begin to wrap things up at this point, unless we get any additional comments that come in. Scott, feel free to interrupt if that's the case, if we get any as I keep going. But again, we want to thank everyone for their attendance and all the wonderful questions and comments that we received tonight. They are tremendously helpful as we continue to draft out this plan and receive everyone's input. We really appreciate it. It's very valuable to county parks. And tonight's presentation, of course, is recorded and will be available on County Parks webpage for the Forest Health Plan. So we'll go ahead and have that available as soon as we can, as well as the meeting notes with all these questions. Again, we appreciate everyone's input and attendance tonight. And if you want to learn more about the Forest Health Plan, it'll also have information on our webpage, and we'll continue to add information to it as we develop our plan further. But again, we appreciate everyone's attendance. We appreciate the panelists' attendance, Chief Ed Ori, Chief Mike Matheson, Scott Ecker from Dudek Environmental, and Michael Rhodes, our Natural Resources Program Manager for County Parks. We appreciate everyone's involvement as we bring this plan to fruition, and it's very exciting for County Parks right now. So we thank everyone. If we don't have any additional questions or anything in the chat feature, Scott, we'll go ahead and we'll end our meeting tonight.
Nothing more.
Nothing more. Okay, well, with that, thank you. And you will be hearing more about the Forest Health Plan as time goes on with our projected timeline for this plan. So thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shilon. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening. Okay. And then Scott, how do you end the recording?
I'll just end the webinar. We'll end the recording as well. So.
Okay. All righty.